Welcome back to another DPS analytic video. This is going to be the second week for the Temple of Ahn'Qiraj for Season of Discovery. Looking at all percentiles first, we will see that the Rogue has lost its #1 spot to the Affliction Lock and the Boomkin. These are now creating a further gap away as the Sub-Rogue was much closer last week to these two classes. However, other than that, everything else is pretty close and a pretty healthy median, other than the Enhanced Shaman, the Destro Lock, and the Arcane Mage struggling a little bit behind everything else. Moving on to max percentile, the Assassination Rogue is still on top just like last week. The Balanced Druid has moved up quite a couple spots compared to last week. The Ret Paladin is in the same position as last week, and then the Affliction Lock is in the same spot as last week as well. Marksman Hunter's moved up quite a bit. The Feral Druid has moved up a couple spots as well, and the same for the Fire Mage, which is actually now outperforming the Frost Mage. And then the Ellie Shaman was second last week and now has been moved down quite a couple spots. Moving on to 95th percentile, we'll see that the Affliction Lock, the Balanced Druid, and the Assassination Rogue are still dominating, pretty much the same as last week. The Sub-Rogue was up here in the second place spot, but only a couple positions down, so not too much of a difference there. The Ellie Shaman moved down a couple spots as well, and basically everything else has only moved up 1 or 2 spots. The only big jump down is probably the Ellie Shaman, and then the Fire Mage moving up a couple of spots. Everything else is pretty much the same as last week. Next, we're going to take a glimpse at each boss fight specifically and peck out what the top performers are. So for Scarum, it's going to be the Ret Paladin again, just like last week. If we look at 99 percentile, still a similar story as last week, as the Ellie Shaman, Balanced Druid, and Assassination Rogue seem to be very competitive for that top place spot. Moving on to Bug Trio, the Ellie Shaman was the top DPS last week for the Bug Trio. Now they have some DPS putting up some very competitive numbers, pretty much neck and neck to the Ellie Shaman. Moving on to Battleguard Sartora, and wow, all 3 Warlock specs are at the top of the meters. Of course, the Balanced Druid is taking the crown this week. Ellie Shaman a little bit of a bump down compared to last week, but still competing for that top 5 spot. Moving on to Fankerus, we'll see that the Fire Mage has moved up a ton of spots. Assassination Rogue, Marksman Hunter, and Balanced Druid right next to all of that as well. Moving on to Princess Huhuran, Feral Druid, Affliction Lock, and Assassination Rogue pretty confidently taking those first 3 spots. Not too much of a margin there compared to other boss fights. As we see from the Survival Hunter downward, everything is kind of bricked off into their own section. Next, we have Twin Emperors, dominated by the Ret Paladin. The Marksman Hunter is catching up to them, however, and so is the Feral Druid. Next, we have Oro, which is typically not favored by your melee DPS, but the Assassination Rogue seems to have no problem. Pretty much after that, though, it's just all caster or ranged DPS, pretty much dominating the top 5 spots. And then finally, we have Cthulhu, the Balanced Druid, taking the crown this week by around 200, almost 300 DPS compared to the melee hunter. Fire Mage jumped up a couple spots compared to last week as well, but still, when we look at that overall, they're still not too far ahead of that Frost Mage, so we'll have to wait and see what happens in the weeks to come. And that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos just like this one. Comment down below what you'd like to see next, and as always, I will see you in the next video.